Hi guys, welcome to another video. Hope you're all keeping well. Seeing as my last two videos of my 20 most boring horror movies were both very well received by my viewers, and seeing as I really enjoyed doing those two videos, I thought to do a third one to complete what I now intend to be a complete trilogy of my most boring horror movies, and entitle it 20 more horror movies that bored me senseless. Okay, right. Again, just like the other two in this series, or the two videos, there may be one or two surprise picks here, guys. Some controversial ones. Some you may agree on, some you may not. However, as you always do, I must stress again that these movies are just my own personal picks. I'm not trying to put anybody off any of them, if any of you haven't seen them, but I'm just citing the particular movies which I personally found exceedingly boring. Again, it all boils down to a matter of personal taste, doesn't it? Yeah. Also, guys, I'd just like to point out that these movies that are in no particular order, I didn't have any special rankings in mind when I compiled the list. I've just picked 20 more. I'd say in no particular order. Yeah. All right then, guys. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. We will start with number 20. Number 20 on my list is Southbound, released in 2015. This is an American horror anthology movie which I had expected so much from. Being a huge fan of portmanteau movies, but unfortunately, I got so little from this movie. Now, it actually features 5 interlocking tales of terror, which basically follow the fates of a group of weary travellers who confront their let's just say the worst nightmares and darkest secrets over one long night on a desolate stretch of desert highway. Definitely one of the worst horror anthology movies I have ever seen in my whole life, and nowhere near as good as the classic Amicus portmanteau films that I so love. That is number 20 on my list, guys, and that is Southbound. Number 19 on my list is The Uninvited. Released in 1944, this movie is an extremely tame, dated, haunted house movie which stars Ray Milland as a music composer who moves into this beautiful gothic seacoast manor with his sister, only to discover that the place has a rather dark and unsavoury past. Now, it soon becomes obvious that the house is haunted. No surprises there then. The reasons for the haunting and how they relate to the daughter whom the brother is falling in love with proved to be quite a complex mystery. But it's actually a very dull and boring mystery, guys, in my opinion. And as the film tediously plodded on to its unveiling conclusion, I became so tired of this utterly drab, creaky storyline that I no longer cared. So there you go, guys. That's number 19 on my list, and that is The Uninvited. Number 18 on my list is Child's Play 3. Now, released in 1991, this third instalment in the Chucky franchise sees the demonic doll returning to exact his revenge on Andy, the young boy who defeated him in the previous movie, and who's now a teenager living in a military academy. Now, this army setting is where the movie failed for me, guys. It has to be said. Too much shooting and not enough scares. Talking about shooting, whoever it was that had the bright idea to plonk Chucky into a bloody military setting should have been shot. Definitely a huge disappointing slump from the highs of the first two brilliant movies. There's number 18 on my list, and that is Child's Play 3. Chucky in the army, God bless us. What will he think of next? Did this movie tank at the box office? Sorry, I couldn't resist that pun. Number 17 on my list is The Curse of La Llorona. Released in 2019, this movie is based on the old Brazilian legend of the Weeping Woman. Now, basically, it tells the story of a social worker and his small kids who ignores the warnings of a troubled mother suspected of child endangerment. Now, consequently, the social worker is soon drawn into a web of, web of supernatural terror. Another movie I struggled to get through, guys, as I became more and more bored. That's number 17 on my list, and that is The Curse of La Llorona. Number 16 on my list is The Cat o' Nine Tails. Released in 1971 and following on from the success of his debut feature, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which in my opinion was a much superior film. Dario Argento presents us with an utterly mediocre tale of a newspaper reporter and a retired blind journalist trying to solve a series of killings connected to a pharmaceutical company's top secret experimental research projects, and in doing so they become targets of the killer. Now, even such great actors as Carl Malden and James Franciscus unfortunately could not rescue this movie from slumping into adult bore fest. After the utterly brilliant The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I was expecting Argento's follow-up to be equally brilliant. Unfortunately, I was sorely disappointed, and so I decided that Cat o' Nine Tails was one movie that I would definitely not want to keep in my Dario Argento collection. So there you go, that's number 16 on my list, and that is The Cat o' Nine Tails. Number 15 on my list is The Unholy. Oh, sorry guys, just a thought of this movie makes me want to go to sleep. Yeah, released in 2021, this movie was loosely based on James Herbert's 1983 novel Shrine, and tells the story of a hearing-impaired girl who is visited by the Virgin Mary and can suddenly hear, speak and heal the sick. Now, as people start flocking to witness the girl's miracles, terrifying events unfold. Now, are they the work of the Virgin Mary or something much more sinister? Nowhere near as good as James Herbert's novel. That is number 15 on my list, and that is The Unholy. Number 14 on my list is In the Earth. Released in 2021, this tells the story of a scientist and park scouts who venture deep into the forest for a routine equipment run as the world searches for a cure for a disastrous virus. Now, the story started off engaging enough, but soon lost momentum for me, guys, and deteriorated to a slow, boring drag. Now, to be honest, I was surprised they even managed to make it to the end. This movie itself should have been buried in the earth. So there you go, guys, number 14 on my list, and that is In the Earth. Number 13 on my list is The Raven. Released in 1963, this is another Vincent Price and Boris Karloff film that greatly disappointed me. Loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe's poem, this American Gothic farce tells the tale of three rival sorcerers played by Vincent Price, Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre. It is essentially an absurd story of wizards and hocus pocus. This movie was not scary at all, but was just a dull, corny comedy vehicle to showcase the iconic horror stars. But in my personal opinion, guys, these actors, they were wasted in this movie. And to be honest, I just hated seeing my favourite horror heroes hamming it up so ineffectively in a script that was only fit for the dustbin. It has to be said. So there you go, guys, number 13 on my list, and that is the utterly atrocious The Raven. Number 12 on my list is Van Helsing. Released in 2004, this utter insult, and I mean insult, to all the Universal movie monsters I so love, tells the story of, surprise, surprise, Van Helsing, who was sent to Transylvania to stop Count Dracula, and who was using Dr. Frankenstein's research and a werewolf for evil purposes. Now, this was a nod to the Universal monsters that should never, ever have even been made, period. How dare they take all the classic ingredients that made Universal Pictures so great and throw them all together in this mishmash of utter rubbish. You know, it was an awful movie. They relied too much on cheesy CGI at the expense of a good storyline, and that is where I'm afraid the movie falls flat on its face. The story was just all over the place, and Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing was nowhere near as good as Peter Cushing's version, and didn't even look like Van Helsing, you know, but more like some crazy corny cowboy in a dodgy overcoat. In short, this movie is completely tarnished, you know, the whole Universal monsters, you know, world. And I know a lot of horror fans agree with me on that. So there you go, number 12 on my list, and that's the utter rubbish that was Van Helsing. Number 11 on my list is The Tenants. Released in 1976, this movie was directed by Roman Polanski, excuse me, who also starred in it. It basically tells the story of a bureaucrat played by Polanski, who rents a Paris apartment where the previous tenant committed suicide. He soon finds himself drawn into a rabbit hole of dangerous paranoia. Now, personally, I could have done without the cross-dressing elements, which was an obvious nod to Psycho. And I also got very annoyed as I waited and waited and waited, you know, for something dramatic to happen, but unfortunately, it never did. The most disappointing Roman Polanski movie I've ever seen, and a real chore to get through. That is number 11 on my list, and that is The Tenants. Number 10 on my list is Unfriended. Oh, excuse me, guys, I'm just feeling another almighty yawn coming on. Oh, that's better. Definitely the mother of all boring horror movies, and that's saying something, considering all the other snore fests on this list. This tells a story of a lengthy conversation between a group of 6 teenagers that switches between video chat and text messaging sessions. Then a supernatural force makes it a conversation between 5 teenagers, and then 4, and so on. And then there were none in the video chat age or what. Don't think Agatha Christie would have been very impressed. Now for me, this movie had 2 serious flaws. Number 1, all the characters were dull and boring. And number 2, it was mind-numbingly tedious watching endless video chats and text messages. Not in the least bit scary and not in the least bit entertaining. That's number 10 on my list, and that is Unfriended. God, did I waste my money on that pile of junk. Number 9 on my list is The Survivor. Another movie based on the best-selling James Herbert novel. This was released in 1981 and stars Robert Powell as the main protagonist, airline pilot Keller, who becomes the sole survivor of an airline crash that kills over 300 people. Now, in an effort to determine who or what was responsible for the crash, he works with a psychic and a priest. But can he pacify, you know, the vengeful souls of the victims? Well, it has to be said, by the end of this ball fest, I couldn't have cared less, guys. This story was a huge departure from the brilliance of Herbert's novel. The horror element was disappointingly watered down. The story was dull and ungripping. And to be honest, the whole thing just seemed like a slow-plodding mystery rather than an out-and-out horror story. Now, I do like Robert Powell, but unfortunately, this was not one of his best movies, you know, I have to say. So there you go, guys, number 9 on my list, and that is The Survivor. One day, hopefully, fingers crossed, somebody will remake this movie and put all the horror back in that was so sorely lacking in this, you know, in this version. Number 8 on my list is Mountaintop, Motel, Massacre. Released in 1983, this tells the story of a mentally unstable elderly woman recently released from a mental asylum who proceeds to slaughter all the guests staying at a hotel. Now, I was really fooled by the promotional poster for this movie, guys, but it was another one of those that promised so much but delivered so little. It was really slow, you know, boring and very, very dull. And so much so that it took me a real effort to watch it right through to the end. But somehow I did. Then I chucked it on eBay. So there you go, guys. That's number 8 on my list, and that is Mountaintop, Motel, Massacre. Try saying that after a few pints. Number 7 on my list is Bloodtide. Released in 1982, this tells the story of an adventurer hunting for treasure in Greece who accidentally frees a monster that forces local villagers to sacrifice virgins. Now, this movie was among my recent pickups from the Arrow, the Arrow sale. But unfortunately, it was one of those few that was a total waste of money. So after I watched it, I threw it on eBay. The story was really slow, and the characters were just so flat and uninteresting. I will say though that the movie did have some beautiful scenery, but I'm afraid that was the only good thing it had going for it. So there you go, guys, number 7 on my list, and that is Bloodtide from 1982. Number 6 on my list is More. Released in 2019, this tells the story of a lonely black woman who befriends a group of teenagers and decides to let them party at a house. But just when the kids think their luck couldn't get any better, things start happening that make them question the intention of their host. Unfortunately, another one of those movies where I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for something dramatic to happen, but unfortunately it never really did until the very end of the film, and that wasn't much. That's just the utterly boring, utterly slow-paced drag of a movie. That was More, and a movie that had one of the weakest, most tiresome villains I've ever seen in a movie, it has to be said. So there you go, guys, number 6 on my list, and that is More. Number 5 on my list is The Craft. Now I do know that what I'm about to say about this movie may spark some controversy, as I do know a lot of people like this movie a lot. However, it has to be said, guys, it just wasn't for me. Released in 1996, this tells the story of a female newcomer to a Catholic prep high school who falls in with a trio of outcast teenage girls who practice witchcraft. The group all soon conjure up various spells and curses to exact a bit of revenge on all those who wrong them. Now, I must admit, at first I did rather like this movie, but as it went on, I soon became weary, guys, at the slow-burning pace it sank into, and so I ended up turning it off before I fell asleep. So there you go, guys, number 5 on my list, and that is The Craft. Number 4 on my list is I, Frankenstein. Released in 2014, this is one of the worst Frankenstein films I have ever seen in my entire life. It's a real bizarre story set just after the events of Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein. Now, after he has killed his creator, the now handsome monster, is recruited as an assassin due to his superhuman strength. And the Frankenstein monster, you know, I just can't get my head around him being depicted as an assassin. What a bloody laugh. Here's my Frankenstein here, my favourite Frankenstein, Boris Karloff. Now, with its excessive, cheesy amounts of strange beasts, I got the distinct impression that this Borefest may have been an adaptation of some cheesy comic book. So there you go, guys, number 4 on my list, and that is I, Frankenstein. Number 3 on my list is The She-Beast. Released in 1966, this tells the story of a newlywed couple played by Barbara Steele and Ian Ogilvy, who get lost in Romania and end up in the same Transylvanian village where, in the late 18th century, a witch was killed. Now, as she died, the witch vowed to return and exact their revenge on all those involved with a prosecution. Now, after the bride seemingly perishes when the car accidentally plunges into the water, the witch takes over her body and all hell breaks loose. But as it turned out, guys, this movie did not live up to my expectations. As the story, again, it was slow and it wasn't in the least bit scary. Definitely my most disappointing Barbara Steele movie. That's number 3 on my list, and that is The She-Beast. I mean, she doesn't even play the witch herself and disappears halfway through. That's unforgivable for such a huge Barbara Steele fan as I am. Number 2 on my list is Dogs. Released in 1977, this stars David McCallum from Man from U.N.C.L.E. fame and tells the story of a pack of dogs that go on a killing spree in a Californian valley. Now this movie really went to the dogs for me, guys, you know, as it bored me senseless. It was a really woof movie. Now they say a man's best friend is his dog. Well, the dogs in this movie were definitely not my best friends. So there you go, guys, number 2 on my list, and that is dogs. Well, finally, guys, we come to the last film on my list of 20 more most boring horror movies, and that is When a Stranger Calls. Now, released in 1979, this movie tells the story of a psychopathic killer who terrorizes a babysitter, then returns 7 years later to menace her again. Now, as the title suggests, the main premise here is the creepy phone calls from this creepy guy. Granted, the movie did start off promising enough, you know, with its shocking and chilling opening, but soon became a sleep-inducing bore fest as the story annoyingly took on an extremely slow pace, with little happening and a lot of chit-chat. So there you go, guys. That is number 1 on my list, the final movie in this list, and that is When a Stranger Calls. All right then, guys. That concludes my 3rd and final video in this trilogy of most boring horror movies. Have you seen any of these movies? Do you agree with my low opinion of them? Do you like any of them? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read your comments. I say, if you liked them, you didn't like them, I say feel free. I always like to hear from you subscribers and always reply in that. Well, I hope you enjoyed the trilogy anyway, guys. Now, I've really enjoyed putting it together. But again, as I've said before, these movies and these 3 videos, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Because there's loads of low-budget movies that I've watched and that, and I've instantly forgotten. But a lot of these, I thought, a lot of you might know them. So When a Stranger Calls and that, and Van Helsing and movies like that. So I thought I'd list these and that, so it might strike a chord with some of you, yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. And as some of you may agree, there is some real snore fests among this lot and that, yeah. The main things I hate about horror movies and that, when they're slow, that's a real chief hate of mine, when they're slow and nothing much happens in them and that, and the characters and that are very flat and that, but yeah. Yeah, but anyway, all right then, guys. Well, I'll conclude the video now. The usual, if you like it, feel free to share, subscribe, comments, and all going well. I will be back here soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you soon.